Tech Talks, the People and Planet podcast. Today, I'm joined by Dan Wakerley, the founder of Pillar. Hi, Dan. Nice to see you. Thanks for joining us.
Nice to be with you.
Thank you. So, Dan, you guys are in, I guess you would call it the kind of health and wellness space, particularly focused around fatigue. Give our listeners an idea of the problem with this. What's the mission? What's the problem that you're solving with that, and the inspiration behind that, please?
Yeah, no, it's a pleasure. So, no, it's great to be here. So I think for our Vita product, the mission is to reduce accidents that are caused by fatigue in safety critical industries. So where frontline workers might be on a building site or an oil and gas site or a mining site, fatigue drives between 20 to 50% of accidents and injuries in those environments. And so it's all about that effectively. And so what we do is our Vita product measures fatigue to give for each worker, to give the employers specific visibility into levels of fatigue of each worker on each day.
Massive, isn't it? What were those stats again? 20 to 50% of all?
Yeah, exactly. It depends on industry. So, everything from airlines to transportation, people driving trucks, mining, oil and gas. It's a big number because fatigue really affects your body, right?
Yeah. Well, so what is fatigue? Because it's quite subjective, isn't it? I mean, yeah. How do you measure it?
Yeah, so no, it's a great question. I think so. Fatigue is very, very complex, right? I think is the first thing. We've got some of the leaders in fatigue on our advisory board, people like Professor Shona Howson out of Australia, and what she would say to you, probably much more articulately than I'm about to, is that fatigue is very complex, but it's about a degradation of your capabilities versus where you would be at if you were fully rested effectively. So if you think about muscular fatigue, for example, you're not able to produce the same output as when you're fully rested, right? For those people who go to the gym, if you've just done 10 squats on your biggest weight that you can do, your muscles are no longer able to kind of produce that same effort. Again, same for your brain, right? And really what we're talking about in this environment is when you're particularly like sleep deprived, or when you're insufficiently rested versus your activity level, then all kinds of things happen, right? You react more slowly to what's ever in your environment. You're less able to sustain your attention on a specific object, which is quite crucial. For example, if you're driving along a motorway, or if you're doing a consistent, if you're operating a piece of machinery on site. So you react more slowly. You can't pay sustained attention. Your ability to recognize hazards, to actually recognize if something is a hazard, is it a teddy bear or a forklift truck? I kind of often say to people, your ability to do those things are kind of, they're reduced. So, and these are all capabilities that are directly linked to your ability to react to your changing environment, to enable yourself to stay safe, right? Or enable other people to stay safe.
Yeah.
So I think these degradations that happen are really, really important. The other thing is you also make double the number of mistakes in complex processes as you would if you were fresh, right? So if you're following a standard operating procedure and you make double the amount of mistakes, that could result quite badly. If things need to be done in a certain order, right? If you're drilling something and it needs to be done in a certain order, then you don't get that wrong, right? Or if you do, then the things can go wrong for not just you but people around you. So fatigue is what we would call fatigue is when you're degraded versus when you're kind of fully rested. It's that degradation in various different capabilities, and it has like big impacts for your ability to work safely. That's why we're so interested in this.
Yeah, and I guess you guys, the big thing for you guys is keeping people safe, isn't it? Works on the ground, keep them safe. But I guess there's a commercial point to this as well, isn't there? I suppose in terms of efficiencies and those sorts of solutions.
Yeah, so I think clearly, loss of life is something that people are very motivated by. Employers are very motivated, right? We think it's tens of thousands of people that are caused by industrial accidents that are down to fatigue every year across the world. So it's a lot of people. What's less reported, and there's less good data on, is number of life-changing injuries, right? Which is really, really important. So clearly, like, the human element of this is like really important. And when you step into a company, a mining company, or an oil and gas company, or a logistics company, or a construction company, safety is kind of shot through everything that happens, right? It's impregnated into everything that happens. So how you carry a cup of tea, do you use the banister when you're in head office, right? So people are very, very interested in, employers are very, very interested in doing this for the right reasons.
Sure.
I think it's just like really important to state up front. But they're also, good safety is good business, as a lot of people will tell you, right? The costs of safety are very, very high. Of accidents are very, very high for a number of reasons. Everything from slowdown in a production line, lost revenue, needing to hire replacement workers, needing to pay compensation to workers who have been injured or killed. There's loads and loads of ways that this impacts revenue and cost, and therefore profitability and profit of a business. To put some numbers on that, because it's, just to help people kind of dimension, we think the cost of fatigue-driven accidents is $350 per worker in US construction per year, right? That's blended across all of the workers. That's not just the people who have accidents. People who have accidents could be millions of pounds per worker. But if you blend it across everybody, that's just the cost of accidents. So I think people want to do this for the right reasons, to help their co-workers, like, save lives. Accidents do cost a lot of money, but even more is probably lost in productivity, right? So you see kind of like 30% declines in productivity when workers are fatigued, for example. So it can run into the thousands of dollars per worker per year. So pretty soon you end up with a place where maybe 10% of your worker's salary is eaten up by fatigue costs. And in a business where workers represent a large portion of your cost structure, right, a big part of your operating costs, if you're losing 10% of that, it becomes meaningful for your whole business very, very quickly. So I think people do it for the right reasons, but good safety is good business because of its impacts on costs and revenue, not just because of accidents, but also because of productivity. So there's a number of ways it hits you. It's big. I
like that phrase. Good safety is good business.
Yeah, I didn't come up with that, by the way. But people, in the conversations that we're having with businesses, customers and other, people say it the whole time, right? But the other thing people say is you can't put a price on safety. And obviously, from a human perspective, obviously you can't. But also because of the economic cost of safety, it's difficult to overspend on safety. If that makes sense.
Absolutely. So what's the solution then? So you've got a product. It's a mobile application, I believe. How does it work? How does it measure it? That's the key thing, I think. How does it measure fatigue?
Yeah. So just to preface that a little bit, when you measure fatigue, you really want to take direct measures of people's physiology, things like heart rate variability, which is the space between your heartbeats and resting heart rate. And you want to take other things as well, really, like, if you can, sleep and cognitive performance. But the kind of, because fatigue is very complex, if you can take more of these measures very easily without taking too much time, you can get a much more reliable picture of where someone's at. But the fundamental is those direct measures of physiology: heart rate variability, resting heart rate. So in terms of our product, it's called Vita, and there's two products effectively within that. One is a mobile app for frontline workers. One is it's a web app for managers, as we would call it.
Okay.
For frontline workers, what you do is it leverages the smartphone camera to take these direct measures of physiology.
Yeah.
And so then we can get a read on your readiness, really, like how degraded are you versus normal. by taking some of these things, because we build personalized baselines for you, and then we can tell, okay, how are things going today versus how they usually go. And that's important because these acute movements, these acute degradation in readiness, acute fatigue is correlated with accident rate, and there are some good studies that have been done on that. So you want to say, okay, how's Lee doing today versus how he normally does?
Yeah.
If Lee's 10-20% off base, I just make that up. It's a bit more complicated than that, but then actually we want to know, because he's likely to be in a position where he's much more likely to have an accident. So our product, workers use the mobile app to measure their fatigue effectively, and then managers can see in real time how is everyone doing, basically. What's their readiness to work? Why does Vita think their readiness to work is as it is? It enables them to do other follow-up measures if they want with managers and things like that, which are all very quick to do. And really, what we're focused on with the product is accuracy, but also like it taking seconds to use. It takes, we do our first measure we do with workers is a 60-second test, for example, for your resting heart rate variability. It should also take seconds for the manager to be able to oversee levels of fatigue, because they've got 20 other things to do, right? So they don't want to know, like, what's Lee's step count. They want to know, how is Lee ready to work today? Because if he's not, then I've got 5 downstream processes that I need to manage, and I'm also doing other things over here, right? So it's all about that simplicity of the product experience. That's why we call it a turnkey solution, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. It does. That seems to be the key as well. Ease of use, ease of recognizing the trends as well. And I guess to be clear, you guys don't offer this the kind of the solution after that. You offer the insight into where someone's at versus normal.
Yeah, so we offer the insight of where someone's at, and then we're also building ways for managers to maybe restructure their teams, for example, as a result of that, but an easy way to do that. So you might imagine that you might have 2,000 workers on a site, for example, in order to facilitate changes in teams. How do you make that really easy? That's kind of another area that we're working on.
And so you mentioned construction a couple of times through this. That's clearly an area for you guys. Are there any other industries that you operate in?
Oil and gas. We're having conversations in mining, airlines, broader travel, things like road travel. So if you're fatigued, you're 4 times more likely to have an accident on the road than if you're So there's a bunch of things that we're looking at.
I mean, it seems like it's so cross-industry.
Yeah, I mean, even in things like professional services, right, whereby your ability to hold information in your head, working memory, right, your ability to take new information in and integrate that into your perspective. So if you're like a trader, let's just say, financial services trader, you want to make a decision about an investment, let's just say. You need to be taking real-time information off of Bloomberg, for example, integrate that into your perspective, like what makes sense now given my new landscape. All of these things are massively impacted by fatigue.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's where I was thinking as well. Sort of high-pressured sales environments and those sorts of where it's just mentally draining. Lots and lots of different applications. So how did you arrive at this then? What's your background?
My personal background is I spent a bit of time in safety critical industries in construction and logistics, particularly, but also on outside of work. I love as we were talking about before we got on. I love kind of physical challenges and stuff like that. So done stuff like rode across the Atlantic and done various different like cycling and running challenges. I like that stuff. And these tools around measuring fatigue are kind of quite common in the like amateur athlete world, as we would call it at Pillar. And so it's just about applying these tools that athletes would use every day because monitoring fatigue is very important in that world to this world, and that's how we came up with it effectively. Yeah.
So in terms of, are you talking specifically endurance sports?
Yeah, but in all sports, right? So in England rugby team, for example, they're looking at how fatigued they are. Specifically, one of the reasons that was cited in the World Cup last year about underperformance, perceived underperformance, right? In the first few games was that the guys had taken on a lot of training load in the build-up, and they were only therefore sufficiently recovered from that training load a few games in, and they were fresh. And obviously, I don't know the detail, right, of that. That didn't come from it came from a public source. I don't know the detail, but these things are, fatigue is important in all aspects, effectively.
Yeah. And you can see why. Interesting stuff. Last question then, Dan. What comes next for the business? What have you got that's exciting this year that you can share with the listeners?
Yeah, we've got loads of stuff that's exciting. I think
whether you can share it or not. Yes.
In terms of stuff, look, I think for us, we are focused on helping more companies manage fatigue, is the first thing. But I also think, we're interested in product innovation. One area that we are interested in addition to physical readiness to work, is mental readiness to work and mental fitness. In these industries, frankly, suicide, which is obviously at the extreme end of the spectrum, it kills a lot of people, right? About 50 people died in 2021 from accidents in construction, all causes of accidents, fall from height, etc. 10 times that number were lost to suicide, right? It's a serious issue. So we are interested in that. If we're interested in frontline worker welfare, then we have to be interested in that, and that's something that people have been asking us for. Yeah, it's huge. It's huge.
What? So it's 500.
Yep, I think 507 in 2021. It's huge. So I think if you're interested in worker welfare, you have to be interested in mental health as well as physical health. I'm not the first person to say that, but what we are trying to do is to make this whole process of managing readiness to work and well-being easy for people. Yeah. Because if it's not easy, it doesn't happen, unfortunately, because there's a load of other things to do.
And do you think that ties in with the demographic of suicides in total, in terms of young males? Is one of the leading causes of death?
Yeah, I mean, difficult for me to reliably make any assertions here, but there are obviously overlaps in terms of demographic, as you say. There's a number of reasons why there could be that high degree of association, sure. but I wouldn't want to speculate too much. But I think the key thing is we get a handle on how people are doing, and we help them.
Sure,
that's key.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been really good to speak to you. It's been super interesting and certainly unique as well, and a problem that needs solving. So thanks very much for joining us. Just to be clear, that your product is called Vita.
Yeah, VITA.
Got it. Thanks again, Dan. Thanks for joining us.
No, it's a pleasure. Thank you. Thanks for having me.